Guess you never can tell. With little Miss
and Vanderelst, and Vanderelst, and Vanderelst. Oh my god, you guys! Welcome back to my channel! If any of you even find your way back seeing my last video didn't perform that well, it's fine. Miss Algorithm and I aren't besties yet. Or maybe not that many people are actually interested in Matilda. So this time around, I asked you guys what you wanted to see, and the overwhelming majority voted for Legally Blonde, which I was so excited about because I secretly already started writing the script. Great minds think alike, eh? I initially had the idea to make another unnecessarily detailed comparison where I compare films to their musical adaptations, but I quickly figured out that Legally Blonde the film and Legally Blonde the musical are pretty much identical. And when I did stumble upon differences, I always thought the musical made the better choice. So instead of allocating points and pretending like it's a really close call, I thought I'd just make a video on why Legally Blonde the musical is a masterclass in the film to musical theater adaptation. Honestly, a lot of musicals that are based on films could learn a thing or two from this show. Back to the Future. Now don't think that I'm snubbing the film though. I'm not. It is iconic, but I am snubbing the sequels because they're in fact quite far from being iconic. Except for this moment, of course. Let's dive right in! Both versions start off in the Delta New house with the sorority girls all signing a card for Elle to wish her good luck for a potential engagement dinner. An excellent way to start the story, as it immediately paints a very clear picture of what this world looks like. In the film, they draw the audience in by showing detailed shots of Elle getting ready, like brushing her hair, painting her nails, but keeping her face out of frame. We are not worthy of her gorgeous face just yet. In the stage version, they emulate this effect by having the Delta News sing their messages on the engagement card and only give Elle her stage entrance once we're in the mall. A creative way to build that same anticipation, that curiosity to meet our protagonist. I like that the musical writers picked up on how effective this technique was in the film and found a way to translate it to the stage. Okay, so we've arrived at our first minuscule difference, which, if you didn't know, I am always fascinated by the smallest changes because I always want to know why the writers even bothered. You see, if I were tasked with a musical adaptation, I'd be the laziest writer ever and keep as much from the original as possible. Unless there's a good reason to change it, of course. Well, the first tiny change in Legally Blonde the musical is that Elle asks the sale girl in the mall if the dress is a half-loop stitch on China silk, whereas in the film she asks if it's a low viscosity rayon with a half-loop top stitching on the hem. One supposedly snags the fabric, the other will make it pucker. Now, I know nothing about sewing, so I went down an internet rabbit hole to try to find the answer as to why the writers of the musical changed low viscosity rayon to China silk. As it turns out, low viscosity rayon doesn't exist. Neither does half-loop top stitch. In the film, everything is just embellished gibberish to test the salesgirl. A little foreshadowing of her lawyer qualities. The musical writers chose to swap out the gibberish for an existing stitch and fabric, which I interpret as a way of showing Elle's intelligence. In the film, it's debatable whether or not Elle knows if in fact this fabric and stitch don't exist. She could be viewed as a good bluffer. Whereas in the musical, it is undoubtable that she knows exactly what she's talking about. It's very subtle, but I like it. She might be a blonde, but she's not that blonde. In the musical, the store manager also instantly recognizes Elle and apologizes for her employees' behavior, which informs the audience of Elle's reputation. And it provides us with the iconic line, "Courtney, take your break!" Courtney, take your break. Then we have the proposal dinner, where Warner actually wants to break up. The musical yet again chooses to stay very true to the original, except for one little detail. Elle's neighbor in Malibu is now Richard Simmons instead of Aaron Spelling. I actually had no clue who either of these so-called celebrities were, but a quick Google search taught me that one is a fitness coach and the other one is the producer of Charlie's Angels. This update clearly was a little bit lost on me as I knew neither of them, but I can only appreciate the writers' their attempt at modernizing the story. A similar thing happens when Elle introduces herself at Harvard. She mentions talking Cameron Diaz out of buying an ugly sweater in the film, but in the musical she saves Beyoncé from a tube top. Maybe in the next version, Beyoncé will be replaced by Taylor Swift. In the film, Elle's sorority sisters drag her to the nail salon to lift her spirits after the breakup, where they basically slag her off to the nail artist. In the musical, they cheer her up by buying her favorite magazines, including Elle magazine. Duh. I love that the musical always portrays the sorority girls as caring and highlights the sacred bond of sisterhood. Oh my god, you guys, focus. This definitely also happens in the film, but not consistently. The girls hype her up before the engagement dinner, but then say all these mean things about her to the nail artist. They are super supportive while she's studying for her LSATs, but then when Elle is at Harvard and calls them, they don't really listen to what she's saying and just talk about their upcoming wedding and the fact they got bangs. Also, Elle clearly doesn't feel comfortable enough to share the truth with them, as she says she's close to being engaged to Warner, which obviously couldn't be further from the truth. I can't help but feel that despite the message being to challenge prejudice, these female friendships are being portrayed in stereotypical, inauthentic ways. Like, this is not how me and my girl gang interact in real life. Even though I'm sure the film writers had the best intentions, even they couldn't shake off their deep-rooted misogyny. Also, on the topic of the sorority girls, in the musical they become a Greek chorus, which is just excellent use of the stage format. Snaps all around. Okay, so even though I am hype girly number 1 of the musical, I gotta be truthful and admit that it's not 100% perfect. The musical came out in 2007, so obviously 17 years down the line, there are some choices that should be reevaluated. In this instance, I'm talking about the Jamaican section in the song What You Want, which in the MTV Pro shot is sung in a Jamaican accent by a white man. Look, they clearly added the Jamaican vibe to make this section stand out from the rest of the song. But I don't know, maybe just cast someone who is Jamaican. Just spitballing here. The most recent live version I saw was a 2022 Regent's Park open air one in London, and I'm pretty sure it was someone of Jamaican heritage singing the part. Or at least someone who's Jamaican passing, which... is that enough? Let's discuss in the comments. So there's an easy solution, and more recent versions are keeping it in mind when casting. Crisis averted, no need for cancel culture. In the film, Elle's personal essay for Harvard is a video. In the musical, that obviously becomes a dance routine because otherwise, what a wasted opportunity. The video essay is honestly so funny, and I love how the musical takes the best bits and implements them in the choreo. Like, for example, the legal jargon. Now, this is where the musical truly starts to set itself apart from the film. In the musical, Elle is the one to convince the Harvard attendance committee to admit her. In the film, she simply gets accepted because they're horny old men. With her main argument being love, the writers give Elle the opportunity to debunk the dumb blonde stereotype. Don't laugh when I say love, don't think that I'm naive. By giving her agency, the musical writers ensured that the message of don't judge a book by its cover is felt at every stage of the story. The 2001 film, especially in the beginning, still plays a bit too much into the blonde stereotype for me. Like, for example, after Warner breaks up with Elle, she's walking home and only gets in the car once Warner mentions she will ruin her shoes, implying that her shoes are more important to her than her pride. Or when she makes a crazy U-turn to go to the nail salon in Harvard, portraying her as a bad driver. I guess the film writers wanted her to start in a more stereotypical blonde place so that she would have a bigger journey. But as a dumb blonde myself, I prefer that the musical from the start debunks these stereotypes and makes the journey more about doing things in her own way with confidence. I'm not saying this isn't part of the message of the film, of course, it is, but I just feel like the musical emphasizes it more. On the first day of Harvard Law School, the students have a little introduction circle which in the film gets led by a randomer, whereas in the musical they introduce Emmett at this point. In the film, Emmett's first appearance is when Elle gets kicked out of class, and they end up having a lovely first interaction where their chemistry is instantly apparent. The musical still tried to add some touches of that at the end of the scene when it's just the two of them. So a little 2 for the price of 1. Establish Harvard. Am I Spanish? Where my Duolingo Spanish girlies at? Establish Harvard life, and start the romance. Her peers in this circle actually differ across the 2 versions. In the film, we meet David Kidney, Enid Wexler, and Aaron Mitchell, who all have a whole array of degrees that I can't be bothered to mention. In the musical, these characters become Aaron Schultz, Sandeep Padamadam, and Enid Hoops. I like that the musical included a person of color to show that Harvard is in fact trying to diversify their campus. But besides David and Sandeep, these are clearly the same characters, only the writers have decided to change their last names. Mitchell to Schultz, Wexler to Hoops. The only explanation that I can think of is that it fits better in the rhythmical structure of the Harvard variation song. Enid Hoops! Enid Wexler! I think that kind of works as well though. I can only hope that it's one of these occasions where the writers name their characters after someone in their actual life. Like Tina Fey, for example, she named Glenn Coco after a friend of her brother's. Whilst I'm on this last name tangent, Emmett's name gets changed from Richmond in the film to Forest in the musical, to foreshadow that him and Elle will end up together. Forest, Woods. Yeah, a bit cheesy. Back to the circle. In the film, Elle introduces herself and Bruiser as vegetarian Geminis, which Me too, girl. In the musical, she says she's a Gemini with a double Capricorn moon. Now, I tried to look this up, and I don't think that's a thing. From what I could gather, being a double Capricorn means that your sun and your moon sign are Capricorn, but she's saying that her sun is Gemini. Zodiac girlies, please share your wisdom in the comments. Okay, biggest change so far, which admittedly is still not that big a change. In the film, our first law professor is a woman, Strompel. In the musical, we straight away get introduced to Professor Callahan. Making the story more concise makes a lot of sense for a live medium where you don't have an endless amount of performers. Or at least producers understandably don't want to pay for performers to basically wait in the wings for most of the show. But it's also a natural consequence of adding music to the plot. Songs obviously take more time than regular scenes, and so the plot needs to be trimmed down to the essential. Hence why this first law class in the film gets merged with a second class, Callahan's class. Vivian still kicks Elle out of class to set up that animosity straight away, but we also find out about our protagonist's next hurdle, the internship. In the film, when Warner introduces Vivian to Elle, they're engaged already, which is freaking bonkers given the timeline. But it also signals that it was perhaps more of a practical choice, something that was pushed onto them by their families. In the musical, Vivian is only his girlfriend at this point. I understand that Vivian already being Warner's fiancé hurts more because it was Elle's big wish, but I like that the musical keeps the engagement as a secret weapon for a later, very transformative moment in the show, aka the start of So Much Better. The musical changes the nail salon to a hair salon. Once Elle is completely distraught by Vivian and Warner's relationship, she for the first time in the story really feels lost. In the musical, this gets symbolized by her sudden desire to become a brunette. She's losing herself, trying to fit into what people expect a Harvard law student to look like. Giving into the blonde stereotype. Genius. Actually, such an obvious choice, I wonder how the film missed it. And this is where she meets Paulette, who obviously talks her out of dyeing her hair and encourages her to win Warner back. In the film, our delivery guy, Kyle, already makes an appearance in that first scene. In the musical, Paulette simply lays the foundation by explaining her love for Irishmen, including the Dewey backstory. Oh, and Vivian and her friend are also in the salon, where they invite Elle to their costume party. This invitation happens a touch later in the film in the hallways of Harvard. Again, clever to kill two birds with one stone in this scene. You don't have to build a Harvard hallway set, and it keeps the story snappy. We're constantly being thrusted into the next scene. In the film, Elle comes to the realization that she'll never be good enough for Warner because of a conversation with him at the costume party. In the musical, they have that same conversation. Reprise serious. But then Vivian comes back in and adds a final kick in the teeth. In a weird way, the musical kind of adds an emotional beat, which is very counterintuitive for musical adaptations because of the need to make space for the songs. First, Vivian puts Elle down, telling her everyone is waiting for her to go home, and then later doing Chip on My Shoulder is when Elle realizes Warner is what's been standing in her way. Not only does it allow for Vivian and Elle's relationship to reach a new low and for there to be a transformation midway Chip on My Shoulder, but I also like that it gives these two realizations their own moment to ring true. Realization number 1, no one thinks that I belong here. Realization number 2, I'm not giving it my all because I'm distracted by stupid Warner. The film has them mashed up into this one big emotion, but I prefer the clarity of these beats. Because we as women do get taught from a young age not to take up space, not to perform better than our male counterparts. So I like that the musical took the time to zoom in on something that was already being conveyed in the film. The musical then once again showcases Elle's intelligence by having her say her costume is an homage to Gloria Steinem, not coincidentally one of the leading figures in feminism. Now that Elle has decided she's going to prove everyone wrong by getting Callahan's internship, she obviously has her protagonist's transformation montage in the film. This becomes the song Chip on My Shoulder in the musical, which I love because it not only gives us Emmett's backstory, but also shows their connection getting stronger. This song is honestly such good use of the musical theater medium. It is such an effective way of showing us Elle's transformation. At the beginning of the song, Elle's goal is to prove everyone that she's quote-unquote serious. Serious being the title of Warner's song clearly tells us that Elle's true goal at this point is to win Warner back. Midway the song, Emmett points out the paradox of Elle wanting to impress Warner, but at the same time dumbing herself down for him. So she steps it up a gear. At the end of the song, she impresses Professor Callahan with her take on the sperm donor case and even overshadows Warner. If certain audience members were still not 100% on Elle's side, now they definitely are. Side note on Chip on My Shoulder. What's with the Red Bull? At no point does it get mentioned in the film, and somehow it is very present in Elle's bedroom in the musical. It kind of felt like product placement, but I don't think that's a thing in live theater. Oh my god, wait, it was? UPS sponsored as well? Well, I guess that makes sense, you know, it was already part of the original plot. Olive Garden. Paulette does mention it at some point, doesn't she? Wait, this is a thing? Product placement in Broadway shows is a thing? Maybe I should make a video on it. In the musical, Emmett and Elle spend way more time together. Studying during holidays, he accompanies her when they go get Paulette's dog back. In the film, they only really start hanging out when the lawsuit starts. The musical really invests in them bringing out the best in each other and having a deeper connection. It kind of reminds me of the new Little Mermaid film where Ariel and Eric actually spend time together and bond over their treasure coves, etc. to give their love a little bit more sustenance. I enjoy these depictions of romance because they just feel less superficial and more genuine. What an excellent idea to swap out Brooke's first scene with a workout video. They even go as far as somehow making her jump rope freeze mid-air when Callahan presses pause. It's just little details like that that really show you that the musical writers just loved this story and really gave it their all. Her workouts also double up as self-defense classes, weaving in the theme of violence against women. Having Brooke still teach her workout classes in jail shows she's passionate, driven, and optimistic. Another Delta Nu that you shouldn't underestimate. Something that did get lost in the musical adaptation, which I thought was a shame, is how Callahan treats Vivian. In the film, they make it a point to have Callahan treat her like a maid, asking her to bring the plum sauce, coffee. Vivian and Warner always share a look, but Warner never speaks up. Thanks, fiancé. The musical echoed this a bit by having Callahan ask Warner to get him a coffee when they're celebrating the pool boy being gay reveal. But that's more confirmation that Warner hasn't impressed Callahan rather than Callahan being a misogynist. The musical cuts out the scene and sprinkles the necessary story beats in other parts. Elle and Emmett growing closer is the scene after Elle refuses to give up Brooke's alibi. The alleged affair with the pool boy is brought up in the court case. Unfortunately, David is met with the same fate as Kevin G, meaning their characters become nearly irrelevant. Therefore, this cute scene from the film where Elle pretends to be his ex to impress some girls does not make the cut. And to make matters even worse, Emmett takes over David's part in court where he points out under which law a student is allowed to represent a client. Sus, Dave. Okay, so Vivian and Elle have a very complicated relationship with quite different trajectories across both versions. In the film, Vivian and Elle actually start to grow closer once they're interns. Elle offers an olive branch by complimenting Vivian on her outfit, and later Vivian calls Elle classy for not betraying Brooke's trust. They even bond over Warner gossip, saying he got waitlisted. The shade. And Vivian even gets cozy with Bruiser. Then it all goes wrong when Vivian misinterprets Callahan hitting on Elle and assumes she is sleeping her way to the top. She confronts Elle about it and shuns her, kicking Elle when she's already down. So sad. This all gets cut from the musical because Vivian takes on Stromwell's part. In order to keep the plot twist where Strompel is the one to convince Elle not to go back to California, Vivian and Elle cannot be friends until this point. So no fun gossip times. Vivian does still see Callahan kissing Elle, but she doesn't judge her for it. Warner now takes on that bit. A man blaming the victim. Wonder what inspired that. Witnessing this kiss actually becomes motivation for Vivian to see Elle for who she really is and convince her to stay. Another small difference is that it is Vivian in the musical who pushes Elle to give up Brooke's alibi instead of Callahan in the film. Only a small change, but it speaks volumes. I interpret this as the writers commenting on the way that women are made to believe that they're all in competition with each other, that there's only enough space for one woman at the table. Okay, so out of the 18 songs in the musical, I have to admit there's one that I always skip. Take It Like a Man just doesn't do it for me somehow. I like that the roles switch up and Elle is now Emmett's mentor, and obviously that their love is growing, but yeah, the melody just doesn't pull me in like the others do. But that's probably personal preference, so all is forgiven. Paulette learns this iconic seduction trick from Elle in the film, where she gets everybody in the salon involved, which paints Elle as this inspirational leader who lifts people up. In the musical, Paulette gets taught this choreo by the Greek chorus. This choice makes sense on a logistical level. Use the Delta News, otherwise they're in their dressing room for most of Act 2. And give Elle a vocal break because there's only so many solos a girl can sing. But from an artistic point of view, this choice also has merit. Paulette is very insecure, and so Elle shares her hype team, aka the Delta News, to lift her up. The fact that Elle later on in the musical uses the bend and snap to figure out whether or not the pool boy is gay is genius, by the way. The ability to concentrate this story really shows the talent of the writers. Gay or European honestly deserves awards. Yet another excellent example of the storytelling power of musicals. It's a hilarious premise, it drives the plot, and has such witty lyrics. I have to admit that both in the film as in the musical, I'm not convinced by the way that Emmett gets the pool boy to admit that he has a boyfriend. It just feels rushed. Surely you could have asked a few more questions to really get Carlos annoyed and careless about his answers. I don't know, I guess it just feels like an easy way out, like they didn't want to spend more time coming up with a better, more elaborate way of getting him to confess. In the film, Callahan fills Elle up. In the musical, he flat out kisses her. If I really overthink this... Which, hi, nice to meet you. I like to overthink things. Callahan only placing his hand on her thigh feels like a calculated move on his behalf, something which he could later easily defend as an act of care, a misunderstanding, let's say. The musical turning this into a kiss, I guess to raise stakes and maybe also a visual thing. Can the audience in the back see a hand on a thigh? Obviously rules out the misunderstanding defense, and so they have Callahan fire her because if she later on presses charges, he can say she's only accusing him of this misconduct as a revenge for firing him. Am I still making sense, or have I just gone full conspiracy theorist here? Regardless, I like that Callahan fires Elle in the musical because it really pushes the urgency to leave. By the way, when Emmett sings, "What about love?" Heartbreakingly beautiful. Cue the waterworks. Okay, so we've already discussed Vivian being the one to convince Elle to stay at Harvard. And besides that feeling very full circle, it also treats us with this gift from the gods. You got the fat freaking show! Yes, honey, work! Elle then refusing the navy suit, keeping us on the edge of our seats, to then reveal that she will fight back but only in a pink suit is yet again such an accurate take of the musical writers where they capture a moment from the film and really drive its message home. That scene ending with the Irish dance payoff between Kyle and Paulette. How are there people on this planet who do not love musical theatre? Like, I just don't get it. Now that Elle is officially representing Brooke in court, in the musical she decides to take everybody back to the scene of the crime, aka the bathroom, to prove that Chutney was lying about being in the shower. She has Paulette give Enid a perm and then wets it in front of everyone to demonstrate the curls going straight. Another clever way of tying in the fact that Paulette is now a hairdresser and makes this win a team effort. Yay, sisterhood! Instead of Aristotle, we get a quote from Shakespeare at the graduation in the musical. Feels only fitting to honor this playwright deity in the sacred place that is the theatre. The subtitles in the film where we find out what happens to everybody after graduation are sung by Paulette in the musical. Their happily ever afters roughly stay the same except for Warner, who is now a full-time model. At the end of her speech, Elle proposes to Emmett as a cherry on top of the debunking stereotypes cake. Just in case you were still wondering what this show's message was. The reason why Legally Blonde the musical is such a masterpiece is because Legally Blonde the film is such a masterpiece. Instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, the writers stayed true to the story and accurately picked out the moments that made the story shine. For example, a lot of iconic songs from the musical are inspired by iconic quotes from the film. Woods, Elle, Marilyn and Jackie, So Much Better. Even the Laker girl in Bend and Snap was already part of the film. The musical writers love and believe in the story. And it shows. This passion is what I feel really lacks in a lot of film to theater adaptations, because that's what pushes the writers to delve deep into the themes and to stay committed to improving the story, instead of just treating it as a cash grab. All of this to say that I think it's time for a Legally Blonde movie musical. That's right, this video is a Trojan horse for my manifesto. With the recent rise in movie musicals, I think Legally Blonde is the perfect choice to suit the medium. Think about it. The world has this larger-than-life quality which makes it acceptable for characters to sing in the traditionally more realistic medium of film. The possibilities of gorgeous visuals are just endless. And that paired with the songs and the narrative improvements from the musical. Come on, it'll just be a home run during awards season. In the right creative hands, of course. And with the right casting. Which brings me to the next layer of this Russian doll video. Hi, my name is Anne, I'm 5'7", and this is my audition for Elle Woods. All of this time I spend, I'd be much better.
Bruiser? Bruiser Woods? Bruiser? Bruiser to set, please. Oh, Nanette, come on. Don't you want mommy to become a star?